falsehood flies, and the truth comes limping after it. When that statement was written by Jonathan Swift over 300 years ago, we never even heard of Twitter bots. The rest of the quotation goes on to say that when the truth finally does take its effect, it's like a person who's thought of a good repartee when the discourse has already changed, or a physician who's found an infallible medicine after the patient is already dead. My hope is that we can find that infallible medicine before our patient is dead to cure, or at least curb, the ills of fake news. And I believe that liberal arts education is and can be a huge part of the solution. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of why I believe this is an important topic and why I should be the one to deliver this lecture. And then I'll give you a sample of what the lecture will look like so that you'll have some fodder for your decision making. So let me begin my PowerPoint and move forward from there. Thank you. So, I anticipated that you might have some questions, and since I can't be there to answer them in person, I went ahead and put them on this PowerPoint slide and thought I would take them straight down the script. So first of all, what even is fake news? Well, we know that term is debated. Some people would say that fake news is whatever they don't like, but we know better, and we know that there are varying degrees. That there was a video just yesterday. By the time you watch this, it'll be 3 days ago, that Jordan Peele put together with President Obama giving a PSA against fake news, and it's full of surprises. And I think that you might enjoy watching that, but it's an example of how digital technology allows for fake news at a whole new level, and not to mention that the democracy of the internet allows anyone to become a publisher, and that can happen instantaneously, and it can happen virally. And so fake news or falsified news being different from the types of things that we study in the mass media, mass communication discipline is really what our debate needs to be about. And so first, before we can really have healthy discussions about fake news and how to curb it, we need to pin down and agree on a point of clash, on a definition for fake news, so that we can see where our true disagreements lie among the people along the political spectrum. So, what is fake news? My definition would be something that's in the mass media that is falsified. But I would hope that we could all get on board, not just in liberal arts, but spreading that educational message to others. And this talk has some solutions about how we can do that. So what if the problem is no longer relevant in 6 months? Right. Well, I would say from your lips, your brains, to divine ears, right? But beyond that, the recently released video and the new technology says this problem could be around a long time. And if it does just happen to be solved in 6 months, I'll just change the name of my talk and we'll talk about the autopsy of fake news and how liberal arts accomplished its mission. And why don't we just make fake news illegal? I know that you're all strong critical thinkers and you know how problematic that could be, because politics is, some people say, like sausage. A lot of people like it. Nobody wants to see how it's made, and that's because some of those power-based decisions don't necessarily lend themselves well to the Bill of Rights. So I don't know that I would want anyone to have the control or the power to be able to say what fake news is and is not. I would rather be able to democratically have dialogues and educate people, and hopefully with that solution we can help overcome this problem. Why are you, Carla, the right person to deliver this lecture? Well, I've studied political communication since 1992. I had an opportunity to catalog and code thousands of political advertisements when I worked at the Political Communication Archive there that housed over 66,000 ads. I promise I didn't watch them all, but I was kind of a news junkie at that time, and I am again. I also study pedagogy and have studied that for about 8 years, and I believe that this topic, fake news, lies at the intersection of politics and pedagogy and lies, no pun intended, but I believe my expertise does definitely discuss the ideas of media bias and media literacy. In fact, I had the opportunity with some colleagues a few years ago to publish a journal article called My Eyes Adored You, a content analysis of news magazine cover images in the 2008 U.S. presidential election campaign. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when I get into the rest of the talk. So, the problem, the pathology, and the prescription. The lecture will go through first the problem. Fake news has reached epidemic proportions. Second, the pathology. How did we get here? And third, liberal arts education as a part of the solution. So the problem, fake news reaching epidemic proportions. Well, we know that some people have labeled our current state of affairs as the infopocalypse. In fact, one author, Aviv Ovadia, stated in mid-2016 that we were utterly screwed a year and a half ago, and we're even more screwed now. And he says, unfortunately, a lot of the markers of what he would determine as a Silicon Valley expert to be the infopocalypse have already happened. And so he's definitely trying to set off some alarms for us, and the increase in digital technology promises to only make that worse. And of course, I don't even probably need to mention the Brexit Russian Twitter bot surge of memes, making fun of people who were anti-Brexit as alarmists, and that surge was very targeted toward the people who were on the fence at that time. And unfortunately, the same findings have occurred with the Cambridge Analytica scandal. So we may be in an infopocalypse. And studies show, unfortunately, that false news, false information spreads exponentially faster than true news. There was a study published on March 8th of 2018 in Science magazine that found that across the entire length of time that Twitter has existed, looking at 126,000 tweets of contested news stories, the false news spread so much faster than the true news. And it wasn't even all bots' fault. It was actually because of humans spreading this information so quickly. One thing they found was because the content of those stories, those fake news, truly fake news, made up, falsified stories, is so emotional, because it is so surprising or disgusting or both. And that's what gets people retweeting. Now, I will say, we as methodologists need to be careful, and we need to read the whole story. And when I read into the whole story, I thought it was interesting that what isn't emphasized when that article is publicized is that it really only looked at contested news stories. So there are a lot of true news stories that spread really fast. And if you put those in, like that Obama was inaugurated in January of 2008, nobody contested that, or at least I don't think they did. Some people might have. They contested a lot of things. But I believe that would have changed the numbers significantly. So we have to keep in mind the importance of teaching people to look deeper, to look into the methodology. You might be a news junkie, and that's also part of the problem for me. Anyway, I told you I was a news junkie. I adapted these questions from the 20 questions from the Johns Hopkins Are You an Alcoholic test, and I started kind of as a joke, because I thought, well, everybody reads the news in the morning, everybody reads the news alone or reads it during business hours. But then when I got to thinking, and I looked at some more of these questions, it's kind of scary. I might be a news junkie. I've lost time from work because of the news. Have you? My consumption of the mass media sometimes makes my home life unhappy. I've felt remorse after reading the news, and I've gone back and done it again the next morning. Sometimes the news has caused me difficulty sleeping, and my efficiency has decreased since my news consumption has increased. So, being a news junkie could be part of the problem. And one of the solutions isn't to stop, it isn't to bury my head in the sand. However, somewhere there's a balance. We can't read everything, and that's part of the pathology of how we got here, that we needed to take shortcuts, and we needed to have members of the media to tell us what were the important issues of the day. And so the pathology, how did we get here, is based on Plato's allegory of the cave. Plato's allegory of the cave was published in the Republic. He compared the effect of education and the lack of it on our nature to being in a cave, being born in a cave and being chained up so we can't even turn around. And behind us there's a fire, a great big fire, and people pass between the fire and us so that the back wall of the cave is filled with shadows. And since we were born into the cave and we're chained into the cave, those shadows are all we see. Those are our beliefs. Those are our representations of reality. And one day, we get out of the cave, and our eyes can't even stand the light, and we start to see reality, and we question it, because it doesn't match what we've always believed that reality is. And then when we go back into the cave to talk to other people in the cave, they don't want to believe us either. So it's difficult, and we've known this for thousands of years, that changing a mindset and being willing to look at true representations of reality is challenging. And being able to look at true representations of reality for ourselves firsthand may not even always be possible. The news has always been biased, but this particular chart from allgeneralizationsareFalse.com was given license to me to share with you. If you look at this chart and you're convinced your extreme source belongs in the middle, you might be part of the problem plaguing America today. And that definitely characterizes the difference and the challenges that we face today, because I teach public speaking. And I teach communication classes where our students really need to know sometimes what is going on in the news, and the sources that we're telling them are credible may differ from the sources that they believe are credible, and communicating that can be really challenging. And I know I've already used about 13 minutes, so I'm going to plow through. But the prescription is liberal arts education as part of the solution. And I recommend, it's kind of pithy, but to go with the medical metaphor, CPR, connect, perfect, and reflect. So first of all, connecting. If I literally just butt up against someone, I shouldn't say literally, if I figuratively butt up against someone and just challenge them bold-faced and say, that's wrong, you're wrong, that source is BS, then I'm probably not going to connect with them, and they're not going to listen to what I say. I get a chance to teach a persuasion class this fall, and I've gotten to teach persuasion multiple times in the past, and political communication, and I know that I'm going to need to take a careful approach to make sure that I analyze what my audience already believes and try to meet them where they are, as opposed to just giving them a ramrod approach and telling them they have to believe as I believe. In fact, that's part of the reason I created an assignment I got to publish in Communication Teacher last year called The Political Autobiography, in which students unpack their own, what Kenneth Burke would call terministic screens. I recommend, I compare it to a starfish on my face. And if I can't remove the starfish, I can't see except for through that starfish. It's a screen, it's a lens through which we view reality. And until we take off that screen and set it aside, unless we can it's very hard for us to be able to acknowledge other people as human and to avoid what's called otherizing them. And I need to continue to perfect myself. And that means to look at a student development perspective as a lifelong learner myself and for my students, helping bring students from dichotomized black and white thinking into more cognitive complexity. And that's